Everybody, let's call our meeting to order, banks and financial institutions. Before we get started, I want you all to know that we have a new guest with us here today, and we're so lucky to have her. Senator Ginn and I are lucky to have her. This is Elizabeth Bennett, and she was trained by the illustrious Rules Chairman, the brass suite back here. And we were able to solicit her services in the dungeons downstairs in the 121 office. And we are just delighted to have her, and she has just been a blessing to the office. She's a quick learner, very, very efficient on whatever she does. She's from Waycross, Georgia, so she's a South Georgia girl, and that makes it even nicer. And the bottom line of it is she says she knows all about the Okefenokee Swamp. And so if you haven't been to the Okefenokee Swamp, you need to go. I've camped out there many times, and I'll tell you, it is an experience. Anybody you don't like, just drop them off in the swamp. You ain't got to worry about it. They'll still be there, trust me. I promise you. Yeah. But we're excited to have her here, and I'll guarantee you that if you need anything, she can figure it out for us. Miss Lewis, we're glad to have you. And, of course, you know, we have Grace back here in the back. Y'all met before. Where'd Grace go? She walked out. But anyway, Grace is our other admin downstairs. We're glad to have them. All right, folks, let's get right to it. We're going to swap around just a little bit. Representative Barrett, since you're sitting there looking like you're ready to jump, if you'll take the podium, sir, we will start with you on House Bill 1053, if you don't mind. You know what? You do it with you. That's fine. Do it right there. That's fine. We don't care. We have no secrets here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, great honor to be here with y'all today. And if that was a look of excitement, I was concerned that was more of a look of angst and trepidation.
We're glad to see you today.
But I'm delighted to be here.
We know how hard you guys are working on the House to get all our bills out, so we're tickled to death.
You can just check my social media, some of my priorities of the bills I'm hoping to help push through the House.
Can I vote for you?
Not, unfortunately, no.
Just making sure. I would.
But
what are we working off of today?
Mr. Chairman, we are working on House Bill 1053, which is LC 500613.
All right.
And this bill is the Federal Reserve is contemplating the creation of a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC, that would aim to supplement and eventually replace the American dollar with a digital currency. A CBDC is a cryptocurrency that would be run by the government. It would replace the dollars in your bank account and your wallet with programmable, traceable, and trackable digital dollars. House Bill 1053 discourages the creation and implementation of a CBDC by the Fed by doing two things. It states that Georgia will not participate in any testing of the Fed's proposed digital currency, and it states that if the Fed does proceed with this, state agencies will not accept payment in this new digital currency. Why is this important? First, the creation of a CBDC would be disastrous for our banks and credit unions in favor of power concentrated with the Fed. That is why this legislation is supported by the Georgia Bankers Association, the Community Bankers Association, and the Georgia Credit Union Association. Secondly, the creation of a CBDC raises privacy concerns with the government having records of how we spend our money. It would essentially allow the government to know every single thing you spend your money on and exactly where you were when you spent it. A CBDC would give the government an unprecedented level of control over your lives and the lives of your constituents. For these two reasons, I'm hopeful that we will be help put the brakes on the creation of a Federal Reserve central bank digital currency. If there was ever an issue that should be bipartisan, it is Americans' fundamental right to privacy, the right to be left alone. More and more states are passing legislation similar to this. And as more and more states do so, it becomes less and less likely that a CBDC will be issued or widely adopted. I would appreciate your favorable consideration and would be happy to take any questions at this time. And I think we have a lot of friends in the room who feel equally strongly about this.
Well, we don't have a sign-up sheet. We'll let the committee discuss it for a minute, and anybody who wants to speak, we'll be glad to. Is this for that bank thing? Is this for 160 or for 153? Yeah, okay, good. I'm sorry. I apologize. We do. She was more efficient than I give her credit for already. See what I was telling you how quick she is? What made you? Where was the origin of this from? Is this happening in Georgia right now, or just in general in banks?
This is a phenomenon that is sort of, as a former bank CEO, I pay attention to things like this. I was the founder and CEO of a bank up in Forsyth County that we built and opened. Strangely, we opened at the beginning of the Great Recession. The day we opened, the Fed cut interest rates 0.75%, and the Great Recession was on, and it was an interesting ride. But I pay close attention to these things. I've been very dialed in about inflation and things like that for 13 or 15 years now. I'm kind of a nerd that way. These things are interesting to me. But as you look at the Federal Reserve's website, we are careening down this path. And I just don't think a lot of our constituents want to replace the dollar. They kind of like their dollar. And the idea of a central bank digital currency kind of, first of all, the banking industry, credit unions, et cetera, it's a tough industry these days. This is so I look for things that will continue to shore up our banks in Georgia, our credit unions, and this would obviously have a very devastating effect on that industry. But on top of that, privacy, I just think it's paramount. There are too many people with too much data and too intrusive in your lives, and I just think it's time to sort of at least send a message that says, let's slow our roll just a little bit.
Do you know of any other states, Representative Barrett, that's done this?
In fact, there are quite a few states that have. There are 4 states, including Florida last year, that have already passed legislation like this. There are another 4 states that have introduced legislation that is close to being passed this year, and there are about 11 states that's close to being passed, and there are 11 states in total that have introduced legislation this year. And I can get you the list. Indiana, North Dakota, Alabama, Florida have already passed legislation. There are 4 states close to doing so: North Carolina, Texas, Louisiana, and Indiana. And other states that have introduced legislation: Georgia, Indiana, Idaho, Iowa, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah.
Those are pending legislation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, pending legislations. I'm assuming, when you say the Federal Reserve or federal government creating a digital currency, I mean, that wouldn't affect your Bitcoin, your Ethereums, and those type things. If they transact however they transact, that's their world, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
That's their world.
Presently, a lot of people have asked me, well, aren't we pretty much digital now anyway? I mean, we use the credit cards and debit cards, and I might do direct deposit of payroll. Mm-hmm. There is a difference. That is in fact true. When you opt to do those things, those are voluntary. You make choices to do that as a citizen. If we use a central bank digital currency, you don't have the choice. It's going to be foisted onto you, and you'll have no options. Presently, let's suggest, imagine that there's a probable cause of some bad activity that the government wants to investigate. There's an intermediary between you and the government today. You might have a bank or a credit card processor or whatever, and if they need to, they can go through the courts. They can get a subpoena. They can pursue your information that way, and that's fine. Without that process, now you've just got the government and you. The need for banks, credit unions almost becomes irrelevant. Every single thing you do, every dollar you spend will be there available to government. Every place you spend it. If you go to Starbucks this morning and buy a latte, they're going to know you were at Starbucks this morning buying coffee. And that's just an overreach. Absolutely. And so all this bill does, really, it's a very simple bill. The preamble, it's a page and a half long. It's got basically 2 lines at the end that say, we don't want to participate in your pilot program. And it's intended to say, we want to push back a little bit on that. We value privacy. We value the privacy for our constituents, for our families. If you have, some of you might have Find My Friends on your iPhone or Life 360. You keep up with your spouse so they can keep up with you and your children so you know everyone's safe. You don't give it to everybody in your neighborhood. That would just be creepy. People don't need to know where you are all the time, 24/7, and where you're going and what you spend your money on. So this bill is it's really first and foremost about protecting our banks and credit unions to help them remain viable, first and foremost. But the privacy concerns are very real. And I think that's why a lot of people, I was researching Americans' right to privacy, and I just thought it was interesting. it took me to a quote from Louis Brandeis, who was a Supreme Court justice who was appointed by Woodrow Wilson in 1916. And he actually said, I mean, he was a great champion for privacy. And, well, I don't have his quote in front of me. I could search for an hour and a half and find my notes. But he was a great champion for privacy. And I just thought it was interesting that he was the Supreme Court justice who was appointed by the same president when we created the Federal Reserve. And he was a tremendous champion for privacy. It's also ironic that he was a Republican and then he switched and became a Democrat, and he was a great champion for privacy. And I just thought that was fascinating. It really is a bipartisan bill, and it received nice bipartisan support in the House.
Well, before I take questions from the committee, I just want to commend you how good you look for opening a bank in 1929 during the Great Depression. I just want you to understand that. 1930, you've done real well for yourself. So
Mine came a little bit.
you've held on. You've held on well. Questions from the committee on this bill? What number you might? 9. All right.
Thank you, Representative Barrett, for bringing this bill. Just a couple of questions. Do you know of, is there a scheduled undertaking of a central bank digital currency? I mean, is it scheduled? I mean, is it, you're presuming that one's coming? Do you know that one's coming?
There is testing being done presently.
That was my
And I
next
can get
question.
you the specific
There are pilot
details on that.
programs now?
Yes.
But there are states that are in pilot programs?
That is correct. And you can go to the Federal Reserve's website, and it'll give you a lot of detail on it.
Okay.
And I can, of course, get you additional information on that.
I can look it up. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for bringing it up.
Bo Brannon, Georgia Banker. Bo, you want to take the podium there? I'm sorry. One more question. Number 8. All right.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Sir Jones,
Chairman.
go ahead.
Thank you.
That's right.
Is there any effort anywhere, anything printed that even hints that the Federal Reserve is moving in this direction that you can share with us?
I can go to the Federal Reserve's website right now, and it is
Everywhere.
riddled with information about
their efforts.
And
on
I'm
central
not
bank.
talking about just things they will publish on their website. I'm assuming for them to make this kind of a change, they would have to have some kind of legislative action from the Congress.
I think that what
Is
you're,
there any attempt, anything in the congressional record that speaks to something like this being created or existing?
it's a great question, Senator. And there's actually legislation, I think, being introduced probably in D.C. To sort of contain that effort more so than to empower that effort. I think I think that's the concern, is that it's almost sort of assumed we'll just go do this. And I think that there are probably efforts, much like we're trying to do here in Georgia, to sort of say, let's slow our roll on that just a little bit. Let's really make sure we understand all the potential implications. You know, the system we have works pretty well right now. It works incredibly well. So not necessarily a great time to go pioneering when we're talking about, when the stakes are as significant as they are for our banks and our credit unions, and certainly for you and your family and your personal privacy. Just if we've got a system that works incredibly well, why shutter that and go try something new that's pioneering, that frankly has all kinds of potential implications, both in our great banking industry and credit unions, and also you personally and your family's privacy.
I guess my question was, does the Fed have the authority to act without congressional approval on implementing a system such as this?
Senator Hodges could even speak to this probably even better than I can, but how the Federal Reserve was created, and the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, and how they are appointed and how they are ratified in the Senate, and they're imbued with a great deal of power and authority. And as we all know, even those who study the Federal Reserve, it's a complicated issue. It's kind of a little bit opaque and hard to really get your hands around.
So
But,
you think they can act unilaterally without congressional approval to implement a system that would completely overhaul the way we
I think they
transact
are acting
business?
unilaterally, Senator. I think they are I think they're not putting a baby toe in the water. I feel like they're careening in that direction. And this bill we don't have the ability to stop the Federal Reserve from doing this at all.
Right, that's what I was.
Not at all. Right. But what we can do is say, we think we'd like you to
Send a message.
send a message. And we do have control over our actions.
Right.
And we do have the ability to say, no, we don't want to participate in the pilot program, and we don't necessarily want to. We don't want to participate that way. We don't want Georgia agencies to accept payment in it.
So
and what it
Georgia
does is,
banks that are all federally insured can make a decision not to participate.
I'm sorry, say the.
If this program was rolled out, hypothetically, you're saying Georgia banks that are FDI insured could make the decision not to participate?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I don't think
That's
they.
what I thought I heard you say.
No, sir. I said Georgia agencies. The state agencies in Georgia, not Georgia banks. Georgia banks will feel the sting in a meaningful way, and maybe Senator Hodges, with his great banking background, could even probably verify that. We also have someone from Georgia Bankers Association who would probably speak to that issue as well. This bill is not. This bill is really just it is a statement to the chairman's comment just a minute ago. It says we have a system that works well. The bill is very short. The preamble to the bill basically says what the bill does. It's 3 paragraphs or so. And it just says we have a system that works well. Why would we expose our banks and credit unions to something that completely renders them unnecessary, essentially, first and foremost? And on top of that, we should all have grave concerns, just like the great Louis Brandeis said. You know, Americans should have the right to be sort of left alone by the government. Nobody needs to have anybody know everything about us and everything we spend our money on and everywhere we go all the time. It's just personally, it's just an overreach. And that, you know, I probably should flip the order on those things. I started this bill because I was a founder and CEO of a bank, and I saw the potential threats to the banking and credit union industry in Georgia.
Let's hear from Bo. Bo, if you don't mind, take the podium. If you don't mind, Bo Brown with Georgia Bankers. Give us your thoughts.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Bo Brannon with the Georgia Bankers Association. We come here in favor of Representative Barrett's bill today. Like he said, thankfully there is not currently a central bank digital currency being used in the United States, and our biggest issue is that we don't think there is a business case for that to happen. The adoption of a central bank digital currency would pose many risks and challenges to the financial system in the United States. The adoption of any central bank digital currency would cannibalize rather than complement the services that are already being provided by banks and credit unions and other financial institutions. And that's not just me saying that. That's something that Federal Reserve Governor Michelle Bowman has gone on record as saying. She points out that the issuance of a CBDC by the Fed would set them up to be a direct competitor for FDIC insured institutions and other banking institutions. In effect, the creation of a central bank digital currency would replace deposits that consumers and businesses place with their local banks and other institutions with digital deposits to be held at the Federal Reserve Bank. And so rather than the local banks having those deposits to recycle in the form of loans in their community, the Federal Reserve would hold those deposits. They would essentially hold the purse strings, and they would decide how to loan those dollars out. And we don't think that's the role of government to be involved in the credit making decisions for our consumers and our businesses. So because of the threat that central bank digital currency poses to the current U.S. financial system, we do think it's an appropriate step for the state of Georgia to take a stand and go on record that CBDCs are not an acceptable form of payment for state agencies. That's why we hope that you'll pass Representative Barrett's bill.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions for you, Bo? Brian Allen? Brian, tell us who you're with, please.
Sure.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Allen, Vice Chair, Libertarian Party of Georgia. House Bill 1053 is a pretty straightforward piece of legislation with all of 2 lines that actually do something. No governmental agency shall accept a payment using central bank digital currency, and no governmental agency shall participate in any test of central bank digital currency. As short as that is, it's important. A central bank digital currency, or CBDC, would pose a threat both to our economic well-being and, even more seriously, our basic civil liberties. To be sure, the economic impact isn't something to be waved away. Combined with the phasing out of cash and coin, a CBDC would enable the Federal Reserve to pursue disastrous monetary policies. Things like negative interest rates could well move out of the realm of hypotheticals and into reality. That's bad enough, but the implications to our personal freedoms are truly dystopian. Any semblance of privacy when making purchases would be gone. The federal government would be able to track everything you buy and who you bought it from, just by default. It could easily decide that it doesn't want you to purchase something. Maybe go to the grocery store to buy a steak only for your payment to be denied because you've gone over your carbon emission allotment for the month. Maybe you're exercising your First Amendment right to peacefully protest a federal policy, only to discover that your accounts are now frozen. Maybe you're recorded associating with people deemed undesirable and now have worse interest rates. Doesn't end with just individuals either. The federal government already uses funding as a tool to get states to do what it wants. Do you think it wouldn't leverage a CBDC in the same way, only even worse? That all might sound conspiratorial, but there's precedent in the real world already. Why take that risk, especially when we already have digital currencies that are readily available? What problem is the CBDC actually solving? On a more practical level, what happens if the central authority controlling the digital currency gets hacked? Recent events in Fulton County demonstrate that government entities are hardly immune from being compromised. Having one bank hacked would be bad enough. Imagine having the entire money supply of the country and all associated collected data on citizens compromised. It's far safer to have a decentralized system. States have an important role to play here, as states are in a better position to see any potential rollout of CBDCs coming, such as being asked to participate in a test beforehand, and can act to protect the citizenry. The average citizen really has no way to know at all, as all it would take is having deposits transferred over from private banks to the central bank on the back end, leaving people none the wiser until it's too late. The state of Georgia should say no to CBDCs, and with House Bill 1053 it will. Thank you for your time and attention. Are there any questions?
Thank you, sir. James Quarles. Tell us who you are, James, who you with.
Hey there, my name is James Quarles, and I'm the Georgia State Director for Heritage Action for America. We're a grassroots organization with over 2 million activists nationwide, and that includes thousands of Georgians here. Heritage Action supports the bill before you today, and we urge you to favorably report it. There's been a lot said about the dangers of CBDCs. Well, I will just kind of keep my remarks pretty short on this and cover a couple of things with one example. First, the adoption of a CBDC would mean an end to all financial privacy. Government bureaucrats would have access to all records of every American's financial transactions, and as has been stated already, that would be a total violation of privacy and our rights in those respects. Second, because all transactions must be routed through the central bank, it automatically becomes a single point of failure. So this is obviously a concern from an infrastructure standpoint, but also by giving the central bank the ability to either veto or mandate certain transactions or to favor or disfavor certain industries or businesses, those problems would be even more minute. And these concerns extend well beyond the financial realm. Just one example real quickly, from an agricultural standpoint, the current administration is operating under a, quote, whole of government commitment to make the pursuit of environmental justice a duty of all executive branch agencies. And that's an executive order that was signed by President Biden earlier in his term. It's not far-fetched to imagine that a CBDC, giving the government the means to refuse business credit to a farm in South Georgia if it's deemed to produce too much carbon, for example. So this would have real-world impacts. It would impact industries. It would impact individuals, businesses, and that's dangerous. And lastly, as has been stated before, a CBDC makes it infinitely easier for the central bank to create inflation. I know that inflation's already been a problem that we're facing. I know that everyday Americans feel it in their pocketbooks. But they would be able to electronically change the amount of digital currency in the government's digital wallet, regardless of the financial assets available for the purchase by the central bank. And they could likewise modify the amount of money in everyone else's digital wallets as well, both to create inflation, but also in the name of fighting inflation. So that would also be dangerous. In closing, I would just note that all of these potential abuses come with no real corresponding benefits, and a CBDC provides no noteworthy advantages over the current system, which, with all of the costs that we have heard here today, make it questionable for what even the reason for pushing it is, and yet it is part of a discussion in the Federal Reserve right now. So that's why this legislation is needed. That's why we support it. And again, Heritage Action urges that you would favorably report the bill today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Cash. Somewhere in the back. There you are. Everybody knows you're Cash. Tell us who you are and who you with, baby.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cash Trivedi with the Georgia Credit Unions Association. Mr. Pro Tem, I'll come introduce myself to you later.
I just found it amusing. We've got a man named Cash coming to talk to us about digital currency. I don't know.
I mean, that's pretty good there.
Nice. Nice.
You want to change your name to CBDC?
CBDs?
How about CBDC? There you go.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Cash Trivedi with the Georgia Credit Unions Association. These guys were pretty robust in their remarks, and we just want to express our support for House Bill 1053. And thank you, Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Cash. And Taylor. Taylor Hawkins, last one. Taylor, tell us who you with, who you are, baby.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Taylor Hawkins with Frontline Policy Council. I do have 6 pages of notes here I thought I might go over, but in the interest of time, in the interest of time, I won't. You've heard of all the extremely dangerous reasons why we want to push back. To answer a couple of concerns that have actually been raised, I do want to mention 2 things. One, the bipartisan nature of it. Congressman Sean Casten from Illinois and Congressman Brad Sherman from the very Republican state of California both have heartily stated their opposition to the implementation of a CBDC nationwide or in their states from their positions as Democrat representatives from their respective states. And so just wanted to make that point. And the second point was, is this actually happening? And not only do you have statements from the Fed, you have an executive order from the current administration fast-tracking the research on a CBDC. The New York Federal Reserve launched their first pilot program in 2022, and there have since been others. So yes, we're talking about a real issue that is happening right now. And so this is a concrete bill that doesn't just send a good message. It also takes an action step that makes Georgia a leader in pushing back against federal tyranny. So for that and many other reasons, Mr. Chairman, which I will leave unsaid in the sake of time, we support our friend Representative Carter Barrett and urge this committee to pass House Bill 1053.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak on the bill that didn't sign up? You know, one thing you did you could add to your thing is one more password we have to keep up with. They forced it on us.
Touche.
There you go. Well, what's the pleasure of the committee on this? Do pass. We got a motion from Representative Bearden over here, and do we have a second? Second from our pro tem chairman, vice chairman Kennedy. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you,
You
gentlemen.
got anybody special going to carry your bill for you?
I welcome your suggestions, sir.
Well, anybody at this table here can do it. I can promise you.
There are a lot of great senators out there.
Not many times do we get a one-page bill. I'd be.
I'm still pretty new at this, so.
Yeah. Thank you, County, for coming by. We get
Thank
it.
you, sir.
Thank you. All right, all right. I don't want to put any pressure on anybody, but I like the bill. Let me see here now. Representative Scott. Yeah, I'm sorry. The guy, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's close. I've been called worse.
I don't know why.
Been sitting next to Ridley.
Now, that's pretty could be a plus. That's not a bad thing.
Well, Representative Ridley has a gun bill. This is my mortgage trigger lead, so not to be confused between the two. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you the mortgage trigger bill, which that concept is, or the bill is supported by our community bankers and real estate folks. And the reason being is it addresses what happens when you apply for a mortgage loan. You go to your bank officer. They then pull a credit report. That information then goes to the credit agency, who then sells off to other lenders that you are in the market for a mortgage. You, the consumer, then are inundated with incoming calls, many of which pretend, or not pretend, but look and appear like the bank that you are currently dealing with. And so what this bill seeks to address is to say that practice is still allowed. We're not going to get rid of that, but we're going to allow it under certain circumstances. And really lines 28 through 38 outline what those circumstances will be. So line 28 and 29 in your initial solicitation, you must state that you're not affiliated with the original lender that the consumer went to. Again, 30 to 32 speaks to that solicitation, what it looks like. 33 to 35. Folks who have opted out. So if I go on to LendingTree and I say I want everybody in the world to contact me, that's all good. If I go on and say, tell my lender I don't want that to have happen, those people can't use your information then to come after you. And then lines 36 to 38, if you do, you can't do a bait and switch, essentially. You can, if you offer rates, terms, and conditions, you can't then do the bait and switch and come back with substantially different terms. And so, again, seeking to address an annoyance that a lot of our community banks face, a lot of our realtors face, a lot of consumers face when applying for a mortgage, and protecting the consumer who's just dealing with their community banker to get a mortgage.
Representative Hilton, realtors have we have a realtors real estate association that kind of governs our actions, whatever. What's the actual under mortgage? And what association is the actual police of that organization?
Oh, the realtors
Or mortgage lenders here, the Mortgage Lender Association.
Gotcha. Well, we have our local, the Bankers Commission here in Georgia, who helped draft this legislation for us. And then at a national level, you have all the acronyms you'd hear about, the CFPB, OCC, et cetera, who a lot of this falls under too. Fair Credit Reporting Act, I believe, is a federal statute. Some of this out.
Line 19.
Yep.
On that one, yeah. Curious. Questions on the committee here? Anybody got any questions? Anybody in the audience did not sign up? We didn't have a sign-up sheet on this one? Anybody that want to comment on this bill here?
If you're for it, you're welcome to speak.
If you're for it, you're welcome to speak. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like the way you did that. Well, what's the motion? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I very happily move due pass.
Do pass. Motion from Senator Hodges.
Second.
Second. Senator Dixon. All those in favor, please. Oh, no, any discussion, excuse me? Any, raise your hand if you're for it. Unanimously.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My Senate sponsor is happily able to sponsor for Floor Leader Hodges.
That is a good pick.
Only the best.
I mean, for real. Thank you, sir, for coming by. Thank you.
Yep.
And last but certainly not least, Representative Ridley. Bring us this most uncontroversial bill up here. Let's get it done.
Controversial bill. No. Everything's controversial if you want to make it that way.
You better believe it.
I'd like to start by thanking or recognizing Senator Jones and Dixon for their fine dress wear. I think y'all shop at the same place. We coordinated today in uniforms.
Very keen of you to notice such. What an eye you have, sir.
I know I look dumb.
I don't believe it.
Some days I'm not.
Your hat makes you look very smart.
Thank you.
What are we working off of? What's the number we're working off
So
of?
it's House Bill 1018 LC 550207S.
All right. All
And-
of yours.
And so what this bill is, as you well know, you got merchant category codes. So Walmart, and that's a 4-digit number, and it's set by the International Organization Standardization Group out of Switzerland. So when they set these codes for every time you use your credit card, it's a standard that every company has to use. There's no way you can keep from it. They said it for the whole world, 180 countries. So if you go to Walmart, for example, it might be listed as a discount store, which is like a 5911. If you go to a gas station, it may be a 5812. If you get gas at the pump, if you go in the store, it may be a 5813. And I'm just giving those for an example. So what happened is those codes, so always before.
That's a code when you're using your charge card.
That's correct. It's identifying the merchant.
Correct.
So every merchant has a code, and
right.
every one of them has the same code. So Walmart, Target, any of those discount stores is going to have the same code as each other. So gun stores, Academy Sports, those kind of places have always been recognized as either sporting goods or general merchandise. So in 2022, a bank out of New York, a single bank, lobbied this group to come up with a merchant category code for gun stores alone. So they came up, and you'll find it on line 38 where it says the merchant category code 5723. Never before has it ever been labeled as a gun store, but now this code would. So they actually implemented this code for just about 4 months, I think, and then there was so much kind of outcry they quit doing it. But the problem is now once they have came up with that number, you have states like California and Colorado who are, well, California has actually passed to implement that code, and you've got Colorado that's actually introduced it. So now, like everything else, the federal government, we can't get nothing done, so we have to go state by state, and that's where this bill came from. So once they come out with that code to keep everything the same, that's where this bill comes in, is just saying that you cannot use this code in the state of Georgia. You have to use the older code that was for sporting goods or general merchandise whenever you're talking about a merchant gun store. And that's basically what the bill does, is stop that from happening here. And I did actually put a little more language in it than some other states did, on kind of legal counsel and some other ideas. And we went a little step further and put that any other indicator code could not be used to identify merchant as a firearms store. So that's what the bill does, and I'll stand for any questions.
Questions from the committee? I thank you for bringing this bill to us. I think it's important that we're not tracked. I don't like being tracked.
I'm with you 100%.
So I appreciate the bill. Appreciate your thoughts on this thing here. On line 102, I think I mentioned this to you a while back about the $10,000 fine. Was that something that you came up with alleged counsel, or is that something that the states do, or is it, could
I
it be
think
20?
that was just pretty standard throughout the other bills that we've done throughout other states. That's kind of where it came in. And, and it's not I mean, as you read through that, even
Right.
if they do violate it, I mean, the
It's up to
Attorney
you.
General sends them a letter, they got 30 days not to do it anymore.
Correct.
So it's not just a, automatic fine on
Basically,
anybody.
the crux of your bill basically goes back to the fact that if you want to have a code, you got to go back to whatever the code was for general merchandise and sporting goods.
Yes, sir, and that would be in, let's see. I think that's a line, here it is. Be line 73.
73, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever it was originally. No singling out, correct?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what it does, to prevent that from happening.
Questions from the committee? Anybody in the audience want to speak to the bill, for or against? Well, this will move along real quick, boys and girls. Let's see. I'll entertain a motion from the committee. Motion to pass. Senator Dixon. Second. Senator Strickland. Any discussion left? All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimously.
All right.
Representative Ridley, you did good.
Thank you. Maybe I've been trying to work with Carter Barrett to show him how to do this quickly. It's not been very progressive so far.
You need to spend a little more time.
They told me he was a little nervous. I didn't notice, but he was all right.
Yeah,
He did good.
Oh, and
Hold on a minute, man.
Chairman Brass is going to carry.
Chairman Brass is? That's fair choice.
I thought it might be.
Fair choice. Guys, Clint, Senator Dixon, Senator Jones, before you leave, our dinner tomorrow night at Pure Taqueria for the Banks and Banking dinner in Inman Park. Okay, blue jeans, very casual. Everybody, thank you. I'm kindly. Thank you for coming. Anything else we got to bring before the board? We stand adjourned. Thank y'all for coming.